Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR. It's Tuesday, February 3rd, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. On today's show, we have a couple of stories. First, you'll hear baseball talk from Royals beat writer Jaylon Thompson and columnist Vahe Gregorian. You'll also hear from Royals owner John Sherman, general manager JJ Picollo, and first baseman Vinnie Pasquantino. We got a chance to speak with them last weekend at the Royals rally at Kauffman Stadium. You'll hear Sherman talk about the new ballpark, JJ Picollo on how the Royals need to improve, and Vinny on moving the fences in at the K and how he thought about the process. After a break, Vahe will stick around and we'll discuss his Pro Football Hall of Fame vote that made national news last week. Vahe's one of 50 Hall of Fame voters, and he did not include six-time Super Bowl winning coach Bill Belichick on his ballot. We know Belichick will not be part of the 2026 class. It'll be announced later this week. Vahe will share his thoughts on the voting process and the reaction he's received since his column was posted last week. And we'll finish up by telling you what's on my radar in Kansas City sports. Hello, Vahe.
Hi, Blair.
Jaylon, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How you doing, Blair?
Good. Glad you guys could make it. You know, it wasn't baseball weather last weekend when the Royals rally was held at Kauffman. There were plenty of fans, though. Royals players were there. I don't know how many years they've charged for Fan Fest. Did they charge when it was at Bartle Hall? Do you recall?
I don't recall, and I just don't recall.
Yeah, I was kind of struck by the $152 price tag for the VIP access and the $27 general admission. I wonder how that affected attendance there.
It was a cold day, but it seemed like it was pretty good attendance. I mean, I don't know how it compares to the old Bartle Hall days. It's been, was this about the fourth year they've done it in this form?
I think that's right. I think this was the fourth year at the K. And look, I like the format, and we got to talk to a lot of people, right, Jaylon? We got Seth Lugo was there, and Matt Strom, and Vinny, which you'll hear from Vinnie Pasquantino later. Salvador Perez, always a highlight. What were some of the highlights of the day for you?
I think for me, the highlight was just seeing the guys in their uniforms again.
Yeah.
You kind of miss them a little bit because you see them every day, and you have that 3 to 4 month stretch where they're gone. And now the Isles of Spring are coming back, and it's about time for another season of Royals baseball.
And you'll be heading down to spring training next week, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that'll be great. All right. So, like I said, we're going to hear from a few of the Royals. We'll start with Chairman and CEO John Sherman and what he said about the prospect of a downtown location in response to a question from our Sam McDowell.
Yeah, I think that you have to, I just like in any business, right? You have to be willing to adapt and be flexible to achieve that ultimate goal that we've talked about. But I think if you have your druthers, I would love to see us kind of in the heart of the city, in the cultural part of the city, where we can enhance maybe some things that are already going on and make it better. So that's probably a soft spot, but also have to be open to other ideas, right, to make sure that we accomplish that.
So adapt and be flexible, open to new ideas, and yet also the heart of the city, the cultural center. Listen, it seems like he's keeping his options open at a time when options appear to be closing.
I agree with that. Let me pause before we enter right into that fully and just tip the cap to Sam McDowell for his framing of the question. Right, it's no less artful than Salvi framing a pitch, because it led to what I thought was at least more of an answer than I expected at a time where they're certainly committed to not giving much away. And the fact that John rolled with it in such a way as to describe downtown as really still the crux of what this should be, I thought that was kind of telling. Now, how telling it was that he dropped the word cultural in there, I don't know, but it initially made me think, maybe we're looking at closer to 18th and Vine than I thought. Maybe that's more back in play than I realized. But I do think he told some things, he's revealed some things there without giving anything away that harkens back to the start of this whole thing, when it sure seemed like the whole point of it was energize downtown.
That was the kind of the original thought from John Sherman was downtown. We've talked about it before. Ryan Lefevre asked him at the first listening tour stop back a few years ago, can you commit to saying the new stadium would be in Kansas City, Missouri?
Yeah.
And John said yes.
Yeah. The question came from the audience through Ryan.
Yeah.
But John didn't hesitate to say yes. And obviously that is not held up as what they feel is something they have to assure.
I think we're getting close to an answer, though, Jaylon. The timetable is such that they got to get something built here pretty soon. We have to agree on a place and get something built pretty soon because this lease is expiring after the 2030 baseball season.
Correct.
2030. And we didn't play it, but there's doubt that is within the Royals organization from what I heard in their tone, because they've said, we're not playing at Kauffman Stadium after the 2030 season. It's not happening. Then Saturday they say, well, a fallback option is we can extend it further and stay at Kauffman. So now if you are a member of Jackson County, wherever you are, you're a Royals fan, you've been told we're not playing at the K. Now you're being told, well, we can stay. You're going to have people that's like, why don't we just stay where they're at and rebuild around Kauffman Stadium? And I get it. The Royals say the Strussley Foundation can't be done and all that, but the Chiefs are out of there. There's an avenue for you to potentially stay where you are and get everything you want on that plot of land. I know they don't want to do it. They want to be downtown, but there's some doubt, I think, in there where if they don't make a decision soon, people are going to wonder, why not just stay where you're at?
A question I wanted to get in the other day, and perhaps it would not have gotten any good answer at all, but I really wanted to just ask, with the understanding now that the dynamics in play have the Chiefs intending to move, right? We still don't know that the Chiefs can pull that off fully. I mean, I guess it's 99%, but there are elements of this that aren't assured yet. But if you know for sure the Chiefs are leaving, does that in any way open up discussion or thought at all about what could we do at the Truman Sports Complex that could make this the sort of wonderland we want? I tend to think that that's just not in play, but I really would like to hear somebody say all the reasons why. And Blair, one of the first things I talked with you about when I got here in 2013 was how odd that there is no development at 70 and 435 in the state of Missouri, and there is nothing but development at 70 and 435 in the state of Kansas. And that's certainly borne out all the more since.
You guys are right. It struck me when John was asked about the possibility of staying. He didn't slam the door on it. I think wanted us to leave thinking that it's likely not going to happen. But the fact that the door is cracked on that possibility surprised me a little bit. So,
I might be wrong about this, Blair, but I think that first, and Jaylon, I don't remember if you were here yet then. I don't think you were, but I think that first listening tour meeting at the Westport Plex Pod was December 22. Could it have been December 21?
It was in December. I remember it was in December.
Yeah. Well, let's say for argument's sake, it was 22. So 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. This is the fifth calendar year that we're onto this, not 5 full years, but it wasn't just talked about for the first time then. So think about how we felt about this then, like, oh, it's way too early to be talking about it now. Are they going to be able to get this done in such a way that they can stick with their initial statement that they'll definitely be gone in 2030, after 2030?
You're listening to SportsBeat KC with Royals beat writer Jaylon Thompson and star columnist Vahe Gregorian. I'm Blair Kirchhoff. Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about the Royals product that's going to be on the field this year. JJ Picollo, the general manager, offered his thoughts about where he thought the Royals fell short last season.
I think the biggest lesson that we all took, you can't take anything for granted. Just because we had a good 24 doesn't mean you have a good 25. We're not just going to be able to show up and be a playoff team. We got to fight and claw and win every game we can. And I think a focus for Q and myself is how do we control the controllables this year? How do we not beat ourselves? Good teams don't beat themselves. Now, last year we thought we left a little too much out there that could have led to more wins, whether it was hitting with runners in score position, having the depth we needed early or going into the year, whatever it may be. We felt like there was wins out there we didn't get, and we feel responsible for that. So the emphasis going to get a lot on, we want to say fundamentals, but when it comes down to it, fundamentals are controllable. Being in the right spot, securing an out. It's a game of 27 outs or a race to 27 outs. If we can secure outs consistently, play good defense, take advantage of any base running. Our base running was poor last year. We got away from our identity a little too much. We got to put pressure on other teams because we know what it's like when teams are putting pressure on us. We're typically the team putting pressure on the opposition. We got to get back to that.
Jaylon, I love JJ's honesty there. He called it like he saw it, didn't he? Didn't like the base running, thought the fundamentals were poor. What did the Royals do in your mind to address some of these off-season issues just in terms of personnel?
I think the Royals built their identity and they streamlined it. This is no longer Salvador Perez's team. They have said that, and they've been really nailed down on that on Saturday. Vinnie Pasquantino said Michael and Garcia and Bobby Witt Jr. is going to lead this team, and everyone has to fall in line behind them. JJ Picollo said we're not getting leaders from free agency. It's on you guys. It's on Michael. It's on Bobby. It's on Vane to lead this team to where they need to go. The most fundamental player that JJ was just talking about is Bobby Witt Jr. It starts with him. It starts and ends with your superstar. So for them to get back to where they're going to be as a playoff team that they were in 2024, it's going to start with Bobby being that vocal guy, being the person to say, hey, this is how we do this here. This is our standard. That's encouraging the young guys like Carter Jensen and Jack Caglione, the new guy like Isaac Collins, a guy like Lane Thomas that's a veteran that's coming in. This is the Royals way. So really, I think that honesty is really pointed towards your superstars. 3, 4, 5. That's the years that they're in. If you look at from Vinny to Bobby to Michael, right? This is their time to show time. So I think that's what he's saying. He's not calling them out, but he's saying you guys got to lead us because we can't depend on our older veterans anymore.
I like that thought, Vahe, that it's time now for younger Royals to be in the position of being the examples in the clubhouse.
It's funny. JJ had spoken about that a little bit last year, so I wanted to hear what he'd say about it this year, and he really sort of took it up a notch instead of walked it back. I mean, I think the exact words included, at some point it's your time. But I think going back to the original way you were talking about this too, I do think in all we heard both from JJ and Matt Quatraro, the manager, and in at least in what I perceive in some of the off-season shifts in coaching, there's going to be a front burner emphasis on fundamentals. In fact, I think Matt Quatraro said this the other day, in part because so many guys are going to go to the World Baseball Classic, they're going to front load the sorts of things they would ordinarily maybe stretch out a little bit. And I took that to mean base paths and, whether it's that outfield angles, all these little things. And look, we know every team works on this stuff every year. I don't think you would say last year the Royals were negligent in coaching it, but they're negligent in executing it. And that's the part they've got to unlock.
One of the players Saturday who said he's looking more about going first to third was Vinnie Pasquantino, and I'm not sure we're going to see a lot of that.
He's going to take better angles.
Right. But he's coming off a super season, 32 home runs, 113 RBIs, a 475 slug, all career highs. He was also, as we found out Saturday, if we didn't already know, one of the more thoughtful players on this roster. He had plenty to say about the idea of Kauffman Stadium fences moving in and making it a more hitter-friendly park. But let's hear what Vinnie Pasquantino had to say about this.
One of the things I very much struggle with in baseball is the data. And what I mean by that is it's trying to assign value to specific things that we don't 100% know what the answer is to. Like it. Kauffman Stadium is a great place. Everybody agrees that it's awesome. You can see well here. Like, the fans are amazing here. But when you just go into the pure data, if you talk to any major league hitter that has ever played here, they will tell you it's not a hitter's ballpark. And and I tried to explain this in the tweet, is hitter's ballpark by definition to a hitter means I can hit a cheap home run. That's it. That's it. I don't have to get it for it to go. The data, however, says that it's one of the best places to hit in the league because you can turn doubles into triple. Like, it's just assigning value to those different things. Now, I guess as a player, you shouldn't always be questioning the data, but I would like to understand how I'm like viewed at my job. And so the question I'm kind of thinking about is, if they move the fences in and we get incrementally more home runs, but we get incrementally less triples, doubles, and singles, will it now flip and become less of a hitter's ball? It's just a thinking exercise. It's nothing that's gonna, like, I'm just questioning it. That's it. I love it that the fences are coming in. 100% I love it. You kidding me? But I'm just thinking. I try to think about things before I react to them, and sometimes when I think about them publicly, it seems like I'm reacting, which is totally fair. But these are just conversations that I just want guys to know in baseball it's okay to understand how things are quantified. I don't think that should get lost on people, that you're allowed to question how you're viewed. Because if I could get better at something analytically, why would I not want to get better at it? So I just think I ask a lot of questions, and sometimes that's frowned upon because it's like, well, just go hit. Just go play defense, which I'm going to. But I still do just wonder some things sometimes. And I think in those specific comments, it came off negative, and it wasn't supposed to.
Just a thinking exercise with Vinnie Pasquantino. How do you not love that? And you wrote about it, Vahe.
Yeah.
You took off from that and wrote a column.
Well, you can't not love it, because it really is an internal monologue in some ways that we don't often get. No names, but I was talking to a smart sports writer as we were leaving the other day, and he was saying something about how, you want hitters' minds generally to be uncluttered, and we picture suddenly E equals MC squared in there, and or the chalkboard in A Beautiful Mind. Right. And I think Vinny would actually be great to talk to very specifically about that aspect of this, because the mind's always churning. But I do think it does stand out. Look, Vinny's a very engaging and entertaining and truly thoughtful guy. And I think it's kind of neat how he brings us all along with that, right? And by us, I mean, I think that's from the media to fans. And I do think this circles back to something we were talking about earlier. I think Vinny does exert a presence in that clubhouse. But I think, oddly enough, at least Jaylon, you could probably speak to this more than me, but I think oddly enough, he's still looking for his exact voice in how to do that. Because I think, for all as brash as he might seem, there's humility to him too. So, maybe it's just a matter of the years put in and all that. But I think it's interesting to think about how he fits into that matrix.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Vahe. And I really like knowing Vinny and knowing his passion and his desire to understand the numbers and the data behind it. We got to remember, he just signed his 2-year contract. He was going to be with the Rose anyway, but they bought out his first and second year arbitration, right? He knows exactly the numbers and the data that he needs to be that player that can get exactly what his value is and what he's owed. So I know all that was weighing on him, and he's really dug into what makes him the player that he is today, which is why when you asked him the question on Saturday, was it discouraging? He said, yeah, that's something I don't want to go through again, because he understood, like, you have the team values you one way, he values himself as another way, and he's happy they met in the middle. But you got to remember, this dude is a slugger. He's a top 3 hitter in the lineup. That the Royals live and die by what Vinnie Pasquantino does on the field. So for him to say, bring the fences in, makes it more of a hitter's part, I think it's going to really benefit him. And my only concern, though, is I hope he doesn't overthink when he's at the plate, because the fences are in and he has to concentrate on, do I overswing, underswing? Just go be Vinnie Pasquantino. And I think you'll see that next level out of him this season and beyond.
I think they take another a 2025 season from Vinnie in 2026. That was a pretty big year for you.
Yeah, and let's remember too that a lot of those numbers were concentrated in the months following April and early May, when he really was just not himself.
Yeah, broke from the gate so slowly last year.
But I do have a question though, and for me being here 3-4 years, seeing the Royals in April, it's hard to hit when it's cold outside. How does the weather impact with the fences being in? Does that help the Royals get out to an even better start, knowing that you don't have to hit it as far to get it out in the early months? And does that help you down or to get off to a good start in the AL Central is going to be stronger this year?
Oh, it's a good question. One quick interjection is just, if I'm not mistaken, as Bill Self would say when he says something he knows is true, didn't Jonathan India in his very first at bat?
Yeah.
Yes.
Have this what would have been a home run now, and
He would
pointing at the other parts.
Yes,
He would have
every ballpark in America except for
So just think of that one micro example, and it's just an anecdote. It might have no bearing on this, but I've not studied the schedule in such a way as to know how front loaded the home schedule is.
well, thankfully for the Royals, they play in a division with a lot of cold weather, other teams, and they opened the season in warm weather, Atlanta, Jaylon's hometown, so that'll be a great trip for you. Okay, let's take a break, and Vahe is going to stick around and talk about his Pro Football Hall of Fame ballot. Jaylon, thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Welcome back to SportsBeat KC. Vahe Gregorian is one of 50 voters for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and this group selects the class that will be announced on Thursday. Word got out last week that New England Patriots coach Bill Belichick did not receive enough votes from the committee, so he'll not be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Well, Patriots fans reacted with outrage, and social media keyboard jockeys had their say. So did Vahe. You became the first person on the selection committee to say publicly that you did not vote for Belichick, and we'll get into the process in a moment, but let's start by talking about the reaction a little bit. I suppose it's died down some.
Yeah, I say that at the risk of knowing there's further waves probably coming, and that I'll just say I've compartmentalized in ways that allow me to perhaps not know the entire span of it right now. But just to that point, I will say I certainly expected dissent and outrage. It's some of the volume and tone is a little outside the pale, beyond the pale, but more or less it goes with the territory, and it's something anybody in our business, including you, have lived with when something's unpopular.
What made you decide to write about it? You were the first one to publicly admit that you had not voted for Belichick.
It's a really good question, and I don't know that I really had to, but I kept thinking as more and more was sort of coming out about it, that I didn't see a reason to hide behind it, and I really thought it might be helpful to the process, to just a general understanding of how this works, how it could come to be, if I could speak to my little sliver of it. And I at least, I don't want to sound highfalutin, right? But I felt like if I voted as a matter of principle, I had to back it up as a matter of principle. And obviously people are free to disagree with the rationale, and they have, and that's great. I've had great discussions with some people about it. But I thought it would be of service actually to say, here's why.
And in doing so, I think you've exposed, I don't want to say a flaw, that's too strong a term, but something in the process that probably needs to be addressed, and a process that is constantly examined and tinkered with. And I think we might see some of that again. Maybe the best way to get into that is describing what the process is and why you came to the decision that you did.
Yeah. Let me hit right at the way the process is currently, and then I'll come back to one of the other points you made. So there's a couple different aspects of voting for all 50 of us. One aspect is somewhat simple. It's the modern players. And on this day where we spend 9 or 10 hours on a Zoom call, we spend probably 5 or 6 hours on the modern players, getting that list from 15 to 10 to 7 to 5. The other part of the voting is 3 seniors, a coach, and a contributor, all lumped together under one umbrella. That's 5 people, and you're allowed to vote for up to 3. Now, I don't know if this is the part you meant, but it's the part that I've been thinking of. These are pretty much apples and oranges. I mean, what I think of Roger Craig has nothing to do with what I think of Bill Belichick. What I think of L.C. Greenwood, nothing to do with Robert Kraft. But we're allowed to vote for 3. One of the reasons this was done, it's just been a few years that this happened, I think was in response to a little bit of an outcry from some former Hall of Famers that they want the Hall to be more and more exclusive instead of more and more inclusive. So certainly that's done that. I mean, it's minimized the people coming out of those categories. Last year, Mike Holmgren didn't get in, and it was the same setup. Mike Holmgren belongs in the Hall of Fame. I think it's fair to say Bill Belichick belongs in the Hall of Fame all the more.
Sure.
But it's not a simple up-down vote on each guy, I guess is the biggest point I would make, and I think what you're speaking to. So if it were up-down vote, I think Bill Belichick would have gotten in with 40 of the 50 votes. I don't know that. But I can say in my case, I would have voted for him if it were that way. But the bottom line and how I framed it was that I think it's a players' league. These are 3 players I believe belong in the Hall of Fame, and they probably aren't going to get in if they don't get their chance when they're brought up through the senior pool, because there's so many other deserving seniors. And oftentimes once a guy gets this at bat out of that pool, he just goes right back in the abyss.
Mm. Right. And so those 3 players, you mentioned L.C. Greenwood and Roger Craig, and Ken Anderson, of course, the Bengals quarterback, was the other one. It is there. It gives you plenty to think about as a voter, and it forces you to make a decision on the process as much as it does the individual being voted upon. I think. I mean, if I understand it correctly, you chose a older players whose time on the ballot is soon to expire over a coach who will be on the ballot forever. I mean, you didn't have to. Belichick's going to get in the Hall of Fame. I'm with you. I happen to think that Roger Craig and L.C. Greenwood, for sure, those 2 should be Hall of Famers. I hope that their time is going to come at some point. But I don't know, Vahe. I guess if I were in charge of that committee, what I might have done was, at the end of the voting process, I would have gone back to the 50 voters and said, this is the class that we have selected. Does it pass the eye test? And if that had happened, maybe this we wouldn't have the firestorm that we've had.
Maybe not. I mean, I will say I was shocked that Belichick didn't get in. I thought I'd be one of a handful, maybe 6, 7 at the most, and for different reasons. There's so much in what you just asked. Let me clarify one thing just because I'm not sure I'm saying it right. These people, the 3 guys that were up, the players, are already in the senior pool. That senior pool has probably at least 50 to 75 guys who were all decade or otherwise renowned in their time. If you're in the senior pool, you're not never necessarily going to get another chance. It's just how it plays out. Like, since I've been a voter the last 4 years, Roger Craig hasn't emerged from the senior pool to be considered. Roger Craig thus might not ever get a chance again. So out of the last 6 or 7 seniors, I think a couple got in, 4 or 5 didn't get in, and they've just been put back in the dustbin. So that's a little bit of how it works. There was something else you said, and I've lost my train of thought on it.
Well, I could have had many erroneous statements.
No, I don't think it wasn't erroneous. It's just that. But you are left with that thought. And the way I framed it and what I wrote is, I found myself more cognizant of last chances and likely lost causes than I did of an immediate coronation of Bill Belichick. And, I understand it. One of the rational arguments I hear back from people is, well, you just vote for who's best. All I can say to people is, if you sit in that meeting, keep an open mind, you will not think it's as slam dunk, snap judgment as that. And I think, that's the duty, right? It's to go in with an open mind. And in fact, I went in thinking, well, probably almost for sure it's Bill Belichick and Roger Craig, and I'll figure out the third. But by the end, I really did want to vote for all five. And I just thought, the very thing I said about last chances, it really stuck with me. Part of that is having seen how close some of these seniors have gotten in these recent years, and that they're just not going to probably get another chance.
Right. All right. I think we started by asking about the reaction. Has there been one that stood out, maybe just from somebody or somebody you respect, or just an interesting thought about it constructively about in the responses?
Yeah, I mean, a good bunch. I've probably more enjoyably processed those who said, how right I was. But I will say from probably the best way to put this is from some people within the NFL, hearing from them that they admired the reasoning, if not the decision necessarily, right? But they admired the reasoning and the, I'll do air quotes, the transparency, but that's what they meant, because it can lead to more dialogue. And, the more you understand this, the better you can address it, right? I fully think this will be another topic for the Hall of Fame. And I will say, by the way, the Hall of Fame, you brought this up earlier, that pendulum has swung a little bit on how it goes about this, because it tries to pay attention to a prevailing way of looking at it, or at least not just prevailing, but an intelligent way to look at it and try to get it more and more right each time. It's obviously an imperfect process. One last thing, just because I remembered it, I think you're the one who told me this, and maybe somebody else told me, but I looked it up. I was, I suppose, pleased to see that a few other notable head coaches didn't go in the first time around. If I'd known this in time, I might have included it in the column. But Bill Walsh didn't get in the first chance he could.
Right.
Paul Brown didn't get in the first chance he could. And then one Vince Lombardi didn't get in the first chance he could. So I guess that speaks for itself in a way. Only 6 coaches have gotten in the first time. And 1997, Don Shula was the last.
Wow, it's been that long.
Yeah.
Okay. Vahe, thank you so much.
Great to be with you, Blair.
Here's what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. How about the hire by UMKC? The Roos are bringing in Mark Turgeon, who will take over the men's basketball program after this season. This is a home run hire. Turgeon stepped down from his job at Maryland 8 games into the 21-22 season, and it looked like his career was over after 24 years and nearly 500 victories, mostly at Maryland, Texas A&M, and Wichita State. But Turgeon, a Topeka native, wasn't ready to call it a career, and UMKC Athletic Director Dr. Brandon Martin reached out. Turgeon accepted, and perhaps he'll become the first coach in school history to take the Roos to the NCAA tournament. Also, the FIFA World Cup is not the planet's only major international sports event in 2026. The Winter Olympics begin this week in Italy, with the opening ceremonies set for Friday. They'll be on NBC. We have a Kansas City connection. Caleb Furnell, a former state high school track champion from Lee Summit West, will compete as a member of a U.S. 4-man bobsled team. That competition starts on February 18th. Best of luck to Caleb. Well, that'll do it for this week. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC production staff of Gabriella Lacey, Suzanne Hogan, Irvin Zhang, and Monty Davis, and to our editors Jeff Rosen and Scott Chasen. We'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City.